shalach lecha, which is send for yourself. And you'll notice that, I guess from our Haftarah, that Joshua chose, I think on his own, to send the two guys to spy. And that was 40 years after this. But here Elohim tells him to send the 12. He tells them to pick out the righteous guys and send them to spy out the land. And God tells Moshe to confirm that how good the land is. Elohim knew the land was good, but he wanted them to go there and bring back a good report to that effect. However, only two of the righteous men came back with the good report. The land is the promised land, which represents heaven. Frequently in Scripture, the promised land represents heaven, and Egypt represents the fallen and sinful world. We'll one day leave this world and go to the next. And that's about all I'm going to speak directly on the portion this week. Today, I have an apology for last time I did the drosh. I was kind of ill-prepared, and I apologize for that. Stumbled around a lot. I blame mostly Dennis, because he had to switch with me. I would have had another week to prepare it, but that's not true. I knew weeks in advance. He gave us full warning, but I definitely felt like I didn't have my notes together last time. Here, I'm doing a bit of a book report this week. And I know we typically focus mainly on Scripture here, and we don't normally spend a lot of time reading books from other religious authors, but this one caught my attention. And so I apologize ahead of time because I'll be reading a lot here, because many of these words are just not my own words or what I'm reading from the book. The genesis of this particular book was a lady named Nikki, and starts out where she was in the hospital, basically in a coma, comatose in an ICU because of pneumonia. The doctors were not very optimistic about her prognosis. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, and by her second day in the ICU, the doctors told her husband and daughter that she basically had a whiteout, which means there's basically no healthy lung tissue left, according to the doctors. The family was not really believers in God, but her husband saw a clergyman walking down the hall. And so he was so desperate that he ran after him and asked him to come pray for his wife. He came, talked briefly to the family, whispered a few prayers, and then went on his way. The next day, Nikki had a dramatic recovery, and what the doctors could only describe as a miracle. They had no medical explanation for her recovery. The man's name is Eli. He was a regular there, and he recognized her in the recovery ward, sitting up and alive. That particular encounter, began a moment that changed Nikki's life and probably made her a believer in God. It turns out she was a writer, and so she set about writing a book about the many conversations they had over the next several years. She wanted to hear more about his understanding of God, and that discussion manifested itself in numerous religious topics, and I intend to cover several of those here. The first topic is do not worship idols. Next slide. This is Ellie speaking here, or writing, I guess, where she wrote what he was saying. It says, in a time when the noise in the media is deafening, trust in our institutions is crumbling, and our world feels dangerously fractured, this law, do not worship idols, offers something rare, a steady place to stand. It calls us to discover how to be our best selves, to set aside our differences, and to explore, perhaps for the very first time, what it truly means to believe in God. Not God as an abstract concept, but a God who's living, divine presence greater than ourselves. Abraham is celebrated as the first monotheist. Instead of appeasing a volatile pantheon of jealous gods, competing gods, we're offered something far more beautiful, a single relationship to tend, a relationship of love and divine connection, intimacy with the source, one God, not a being to be placated with offerings, but a creator to be known and to be known by. These laws matter deeply. It's only through a set of rules and guardrails that humans can do what they're meant to do here on earth. Fulfill their godly potential and realize God's plan, which is ultimately to be in a relationship with him. These days, we're not bowing before golden calves, but we're still worshiping plenty of false gods. In the modern world, we idolize fame, beauty, money, youth, power. We worship ourselves on Instagram. We chase likes like they're eternal. Today's world says, I believe it when I see it, but it's the opposite. You'll see it when you believe it. Thoughts on stealing? Next slide. Stealing isn't a crime. It's a spiritual betrayal. You're saying, I don't believe there's a system bigger than me. I don't believe in accountability. I'm accountable to anyone. I take what I want because I don't believe that there's a supreme judge watching. Now he relates this story in his own life. He says he was leaving a Kmart, and his family had noticed there was a pair of $1 socks in their stroller. Now he's a busy parent with schedules, and he's running late like everybody. And he thought, it's just $1. But immediately, he thought, it may be only $1, but it ain't your dollar. So he went to the trouble of going back to the store with late schedules and all, and the baby's screaming. When he gets back to the car, his wife asks him where her wallet is. He says, I don't know. She said, it was in the stroller. Oh, that's the same stroller with the $1 sock. But he took everything out of the stroller when they got back from the store, and he thought he put everything in the car. He went back and checked the stroller, and it was not there. And so he checked again. Now it's getting dark, but he has to go back to the Kmart, and he finds the security guard. But nobody has seen any wallet. Now, they were on a trip away from home and only had a few $100s and some credit cards inside her wallet. But at that moment, he relaxed and said to his wife, it's all from God. They went back to their room, and they blocked all their credit cards. But then his wife suddenly remembered that her wedding ring was also in her wallet. He still rests in God's will and estimated they were only out a few $1,000s at this point, although that's a lot of money for them. But he says, it's just money. But his wife was distraught. This is her wedding ring, of course. And so he agrees to go back to the Kmart in the pitch black dark by this time with his brother-in-law, who was with them, and they dig through the dumpsters in case they maybe got thrown away there. But they found nothing. So he returns back to the car defeated. And then his brother-in-law says, hey, look over there to the left. There's a Chinese light festival. Go over there. Why don't you go to the booth and ask? Ellie says, really? He says, yeah. And so he gets out of the car and he walks over to one of these booths with the little girl behind the counter. And the girl looks at him and goes, Ellie? He goes, what? She says, I messaged your wife on Facebook. I found your wallet. Your wife didn't respond, so I messaged you. But if you're not friends on Facebook, you don't get the notifications. So she hands him his wallet back with everything there. The cards, the cash, and the wedding ring. He takes out $100 and says, this is for you. And she bursts out crying. She says, I can't take it. He insists and pleads with her for saving him so much grief and returning the wallet. She finally takes this and mentions that, yeah, she kind of really needs it, actually. He got a contact from her, and he wrote her many years later, and they said they will never forget what she'd done for them. Her response was, karma is real, too. So she says, I, too, have been blessed by the beauty of humanity many times. My thoughts on this is that Ellie was tested by God over $1, but his faithful act was blessed by God and extended to others, including to you by the hearing of this story. On giving. Next slide. When you give, especially when you don't feel like it, you're literally aligning your inner wiring with that of the divine flow. Giving is the opposite of taking and unplugs us from the narcissistic aspect of the Western culture. It starts with acknowledging and understanding that we are all created by God for a higher purpose than just feeding our desires and worshiping the false idols that society dangles before us. There's a line of teaching that asks, why do you want what you want? For what purpose? If the intention becomes to serve something higher, the desire itself gets divine backing. Giving to the needy and deserving is not merely generosity or philanthropy. It's the fulfillment of a divine commandment that fairness and justice form the basis of a civilized society. And remembering that nothing in this world belongs to us. It ultimately belongs to God. That's how we keep a just world, by being the givers, by looking for people that we can help. On prison ministries, Ellie drove all over the state to minister, sometimes just to one prisoner. You don't need to save the whole world, just one person, one soul. Even a kind word, even a prayer. These things are radical acts in a world addicted to violence. You know, a lot of people ask me why I go to visit prisons. I don't judge what he's done. We don't talk about it. It's an opportunity to talk to God. You never know when someone will have a complete awakening. The Bible is full of people who argue with God. Job, Jeremiah, and the authors of the Psalms. Their greatness lies in bringing protest into the relationship rather than walking away from it. It doesn't matter if they're a celebrity or a prisoner. Anyone can awaken at any moment. God has given us a particular mission in life. By talking about God to men in prison, I'm also giving them an opportunity to elevate and inspire the people around them. Don't treat holiness like it's disposable. Instead, use your words to connect you to God, to uplift everything, yourself and the world. Every stone thrown into a pond ripples outward. Our words have meaning, and our words have effects. Our words have power. Deep down, we know God is not just a word. That word is a door. And if we're afraid what we might find behind it. We live in a time when people are more comfortable discussing energy and the universe and even spirituality. But say the word God, and suddenly people get awkward. Why? Because God implies accountability. It means someone is watching. It suggests there's actually a right and wrong. That's confronting. That's challenging. On justice and the courts. Today, this ancient law speaks with startling directness to the crisis of our age. Corruption in politics, institution, and the media. Injustice carried out in the name of law. Societies torn apart by tribalism and misinformation. Courts that no longer feel sacred and laws that feel weaponized. And a generation of people whose souls are crying out for the moral grounding and values worth living by. Law in the post-flood Israel wasn't a tool for kings or priests. It was a sacred trust placed in the hands of every citizen. Justice isn't about doing harm. It's about actively creating a society where right and wrong are known, disputes are resolved, and the vulnerable are protected. When you build a society where the poor are fed and the powerful are checked and the innocent are protected, you're not just obeying law, you're imitating God. And you're creating the foundations of a society where God has not just a place, but sovereignty. Because in God's world, justice is never cold and remote. It's fierce, warm, exacting, sometimes punitive, but often compassionate. And it flows not from top down, but from the heart out. Justice may be meted out in the court, but it must live in the culture. And when a society makes truth its compass and fairness its creed, it fulfills the ancient and sacred obligation. To establish justice is to imitate God. To uphold the law is to uphold life. Now, my thoughts are that these were very wise words from a very giving man. This man is Eli. His full name is Eli Schlanger, and he is a rabbi from a Chabad synagogue. And here is a short video of him. See if we can get that video to play this time. We've had struggle to get the actual video to play.
Thank you, inscribed and sealed for a year full of joy and happiness, prosperity, not just from our children, and just happiness all around. I know it's going to be one of those good years, and we just have to usher
Eli Schlanger was the rabbi of the Chabad congregation in Sydney, Australia. He organized the Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach this past December, as he had done for the past 18 years. Rabbi Eli Schlanger called it Hanukkah by the Sea, saying, "I want the whole world to light up with the Jewish flame." But on that first night, December 14th, 2025, at 6:41 p.m., two gunmen opened fire. Eli had just taken photo that helping someone with their tefillin. And a minute or so later, he was dead. Before they could light even the first candle of the menorah. He was 41 years old, with a wife and 5 children, the youngest only 2 months old. Here is a family photo of him. That's probably about a year, maybe a year and a half or so ago. You'll see 4 of his children there. The 5th child may be in this picture. I don't know when it was taken. But the 5th child was only 2 months old in December when this event happened. A total of 15 people were killed there, the youngest being a 10-year-old girl and the oldest being an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor. Eli's wife and the baby were injured in the attack, but they survived. When everyone became aware there was a gunman, they all hit the ground and hid behind any available structure. But it was reported by those who were there. Eli stood up and he raised his arm and he tried to negotiate with the gunman, looking for another way. To his end, he was trying to protect others. In the book, he's quoted as saying the following: You cannot ultimately change people's minds. If they're going to hate you, they're going to hate you. But if they're open to a conversation, and you're open to a conversation, you can use it as an opportunity to share God's light. After all, that's what we're here for, to be a vessel of God's light. Now, the book that I'm referring to here is called A Conversation with My Rabbi, Timeless Teachings for a Fractured World, by Eli Schlanger and Nikki Goldstein. Nikki Goldstein was the lady that he prayed for in the hospital. Nikki had one remaining chapter to write with Eli. Her thoughts on this are the following. This book was to be our shared offering, a way of sharing ancient teachings, some nearly 6,000 years old, that still held power to illuminate our modern lives. As I'm trying to come to terms with his loss, which makes me question God, I'm reminded that God shows his face on earth in a myriad of ways, sometimes tragic and terrible, sometimes beautiful and miraculous, but always mysterious and enigmatic. This book was never meant to be just for Jews. It's for anyone seeking to live ethically, compassionately, spiritually, with integrity and truth. When Eli and I talked, it felt as though we were in a protective bubble. But the bubble burst when Eli was killed. Parentheses, note, at the time of writing, I am constrained to use only the word killed due to legal instructions arising from the court proceedings in Australia. I understand that means she cannot say he was murdered because it has not been confirmed and convicted, which is a shame, unfortunately, but that's the way Australia is these days. Rabbi Eli and I had our last conversation for this book on the 10th of December, 2025. That turned out to be just 4 days before he was killed. Killed in what the Sydney Morning Herald called the worst terrorist attack ever on Australian soil. 10-year-old Matilda died in the attack too, as did 87-year-old Holocaust survivor Alexander Clayton. Imagine surviving the Holocaust only to die in a massacre on a glorious Bondi beach in arguably one of the safest countries in the world. The tragedy is staggering. The irony is obscene. On my thoughts on this, and I'm free here in the U.S. to say it, Rabbi Eli was murdered. And one of the chapters he taught in his book was about murder. This is, do not murder, according to Rabbi Eli. Do not murder, he says. While often mistaken as a rule solely from the Ten Commandments given to Moses at Sinai, the prohibition against murder predates Sinai. It's foundational principle that appears in Genesis, where God tells Noah in Genesis 9:6. Do I have that one? In Genesis 9:6, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. Historically, this commandment became the bedrock of moral civilization and our Judeo-Christian legal ethical system. But it's not merely a social contract. It was the divine edict that safeguards life as sacred. The law condemns not just the act, but also hatred and dehumanization that leads to it. This law challenges us not only to refrain from murder, but to actively honor life, to treat others with dignity, and to build societies that reflect the sanctity of every soul. Speech, too, can kill. Words have power to create or destroy. The entire universe was created with speech. God said, "Let there be light." People think gossip is harmless. Gossip is a terrible sin. It can destroy lives without a single weapon. It spreads like wildfire, and it desensitizes us to the sadness of each other, the sacredness of each other. The Talmud says, one who embarrasses another in public is if he sheds blood. Spiritually speaking, humiliation is a kind of soul murder. The blood drains from their face. Something in them collapses. So yes, we're now talking the territory of thought and speech murder. All the ways we quietly erase people in our minds with our mouths. We stop murder upstream at the level of fantasies, grudges, and contempt. We expand the meaning of murder beyond physical killing alone. Shaming someone publicly, driving them to despair, can be kind of a soul murder. The law is about bodies, but the spirit of it is that says, never treat any human being as expendable. So the commandment against murder is surrounded by laws about hatred, revenge, grudges, and love. The message is, if you let hatred rot quietly in your heart, you're walking toward murder, even if you never lift a hand. Now, when I read that, my thought goes immediately to Matthew 5:22. He says, I say to you, everyone who's angry with your brother shall be guilty before the court. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court. And whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty to go into the fiery hell. Eli quotes Leviticus 19:17-18, which is also a good one. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge. This is Eli again. The Torah makes it very clear. We're made in the image, God's image. Once you forget that every individual is an embodiment of God in the world, dreadful things become possible. That's when societies fall. Murder, therefore, is not only an act of violence against the human being, it is an act of violence against God himself. At times, we may be permitted to withhold extraordinary measures, but actively ending a life, that's not ours to do. And it's certainly not our place to judge the quality of a life. Judaism insists that every life has value because it comes from God, not for any other reason. Judaism does not have a single standard that makes only our life sacred. The premise is that all life is a vessel of God's image. Honor the image in every person. It's another way of saying life belongs to God, not us. Even when someone has desecrated that gift and even when someone has desecrated that gift, we handle their lives with these trembling hands. We don't celebrate death, not even the death of our enemies. We teach our kids that just because someone hates us, we don't hate back. That's hard. But it's holy. That's what makes us different. Nikki's notes again here is Eli saw, felt, and experienced God in a way that was mystical and cosmic, yet also grounded, human, and real. His childlike glee at his own good fortune made me smile and made me instantly happy and grateful that this joyous man was in my life. This encapsulates everything Rabbi Eli did for the world. He was a beacon for others to follow. I'd never met anyone before like him, and I never will again. I'll close here with some words from Eli Schlanger himself. It says, in the days before Messiah, we know knowledge of God will fill the world like ocean covers the seafloor. We're living in that time. Baruch Hashem, I am blessed. I am completely happy. I love my wife and my children. I am doing exactly what I am meant to be doing. I am completely on my path. And the last video is probably how Eli would like to be remembered. If we can get that video to play. Yeah, you got the audio again. We've had some trouble with getting the videos on this Easy Worship. He's going to reload it. I hope. So yeah, copy it down again and then hopefully it'll play. That's frustrating because it was playing and just it seems like over time it just kind of wigs out. If you can just do the audio, I guess that would be fine too. I'll have to tell you the video, but the video is him celebrating Hanukkah the year before he was killed. He's putting Hanukkah on his car. He's asking anybody, hey, if you want a Hanukkah on your car, just come talk to me. I'll put you on my car. He's dancing around and enjoying the light of Elohim. Thanks. So yes, this is Eli Schlanger, who was one of the first ones killed at the Bondi Beach Hanukkah this past December. I believe Eli's been sent ahead of us to see the good land. If he could return to us and send a report, I am certain that he would give a good report. That's the end of my drash. Shabbat Shalom.